to massage or to have sex with him at his mansions in New York City and in Palm Beach, Florida. Epstein's employees allegedly coordinated appointments with the girls. He is also accused of having his victims recruit others.
Fox's Brian Yennis. President Trump warns Iran to be careful as the country breaks the Obama-era nuclear deal.
This is the second time in less than a week that Iran has violated the 2015 nuclear agreement, and it's threatening even more violations unless Europe helps Iran bypass these biting U.S. sanctions.
The threat from Iran's foreign ministry comes as the country announced it is now enriching uranium beyond what's allowed in the nuclear deal, a claim that's now been confirmed by the UN's nuclear watchdog. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says there is now no question that Iran is violating the deal and that it's time for the remaining signatories to pull out.
Fox's Kristen Fisher in Washington. Attorney General Bill Barr says he has no problem with former special counsel Robert Mueller testifying before Congress, but he adds he thinks the subpoena by the Democrats is just a stunt.
It seems to me the only reason for doing that is to create some kind of public spectacle. And if Bob decides that he doesn't want to be subject to that, then the Department of Justice would certainly back him.
Mueller is expected to testify in front of Congress next week. South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg says he wants a community-oriented review of officers' use of deadly force and body cameras. The Democratic presidential candidate promised new policy changes at Monday's council meeting. This is Fox News.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. Our office is currently visiting our villages, providing contact information for our office and taking any inquiries we may be of service with. All vehicles and staff are appropriately identified for your safety. Please feel free to let our constituent outreach team know how we can be of service to you, and thank you for your kindness.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Get a half-gallon of Minute Maid orange juice for only $1.99 when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy. Get a half-gallon of Dairy Gold milk for only $1.99 when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy. Get a $7 meal for only $1.99 when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy.
Parts of the nation's capital flooded.
Monday's flash flooding caught many drivers off guard during morning rush hour, with some not realizing it was too deep and dangerous to drive through until it was too late. The rain even impacted commuters who avoided driving. The rain not only flooded train tracks, but turned some metro tunnels into waterfalls. The White House briefing room basement, where journalists are usually more cramped than cozy, was flooded, but the damage appeared minimal. Not far from there, at the National Archives, groundwater flooded the building's power vault. The archives said it was prepared and that its most prized possessions, including the Declaration of Independence and Constitution, were not damaged.
Fox's Mark Meredith. A 70-year-old man committed suicide after he was disqualified from the Los Angeles Marathon over cheating allegations. Authorities say Frank Meza was found in the Los Angeles River Thursday. The retired physician was a longtime marathon runner. The Los Angeles Marathon disqualified his finish in the March race after officials said he left the course and came back from a different position. He said he only stopped to relieve himself. A woman in Alabama involved in a road rage incident gone even more wrong.
This weekend in Alabama, police in Coleman County say Erica Cole was involved in some sort of a road rage incident on the highway. She pulled out a gun, took aim, and pulled the trigger. Well, she wound up accidentally shooting her own husband in the head. He is expected to survive and is in stable condition, but now the wife is in big trouble. She's been charged with attempted murder, assault, and reckless endangerment. The police are continuing their investigation. John Saucier, Fox News.
A man who stole a ring-tailed lemur from a Southern California zoo pleaded guilty in court. The 19-year-old could face up to a year in federal prison now and a $100,000 fine. He says he broke into the Santa Ana Zoo last year, cut a hole in the zoo's enclosure, and took the oldest captive ring-tailed lemur in North America. The animal was placed in a plastic container with no ventilation and later abandoned at a hotel. It was returned unharmed. I'm Richard Jordan, and this is Fox News.
Weekday shopping just got exciting. Join the Agania Shopping Center's Shop and Win on Weekdays promo. Shop or dine at any ASC store or restaurant on weekdays from now till October 31st. Show your receipt at the ASC booth and win instantly. Every $20 spent gets you an entry form to win big at the monthly draws, including round-trip tickets to Manila, $500 ASC gift certificates, and more. See posters and print ads for more. Special thanks to Sky Zone, Fundamental Writers, Vince Jewelers, and Wendy's.
It's important to have claims process that works for you. At Guahan Insurance Services, we make things simple and convenient. Same door you walk in to purchase your insurance is the same door you open to file your claim. We can't pretend that the car insurance claims process is fun, but we can promise a hassle-free and speedy recovery without any runarounds. For your home, auto, and business insurance, visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center on Marine Corps Drive in Tamuning. Don't forget to like us on Facebook or give us a call at 475-1162 or text 929-SAVE. That's 929-7283.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I think that's how it goes, isn't it, Real Joe Cruz?
That is correct, sir.
Yeah. Well, I got it down pretty well. We start the program that way every day, to draw some attention to the Bill of Rights, how important they are to our freedom and our liberties and our way of life here in the U.S. And we put a special value on the Second Amendment because there are those who would attempt to take it away from us. And as I read it, I'm stuck with the end of the phrase, shall not be infringed. So let's make sure that we're on the lookout for those who would attempt to infringe the right to keep and bear arms. Oftentimes I have a little vignette dealing with the Second Amendment. I don't today. I probably will tomorrow. It just kind of depends on what I stumble over as I'm doing my voluminous show prep. Depends on what I stumble into. So today we're going to go straight to Zemi Ikotny. Yeah.
Caught me off guard there.
The program starts at 4, Real Joe Cruz. Yeah. 1600, yeah. Okay, so the Real Joe Cruz, a little bit belatedly, played the theme music for Meet the Press, and that, of course, is what Zemi Ikotny is all about. It's my backwards bilingual play on words that announces the beginning of our own version of Meet the Press, where I take a look at the editorials from each of the daily newspapers, scan them for grammatical and errors of usage in the English language, erroneous statements of fact, improper advancement of theory, and any other little nitpicking that I can find in the editorial. Having done that, I weigh the value of each of the two editorials according to Tall Tales criteria. Simply put, it's like this. We're looking for editorials here that are edgy and that we can sink our teeth into, not just bland, feel-good stuff. When I find that editorial, if I find it, I award it the coveted Blue Star. Probably one of the greatest prizes in journalism, right up there with the Pulitzer Prize for journalism. And those who have been awarded the Blue Star probably are commissioning medal makers to design a suitable medal to be worn on their dress clothes for very formal events. So I always start out with the daily news, and I'm almost always disappointed because instead of doing their own editorial, the daily news takes the easy way out, or maybe just the lazy way out, and runs an editorial from somewhere in the USA Network. And despite my advice that the best way to compete with the other local newspaper called the Guam Daily Post is by writing stuff that's local. And in these days of the internet, it's so easy to get a hold of national content or international content, whether it's hard news or commentary. But if you write real editorials about what's going on Guam, you have an audience. I have an audience too. It's my phone ringing.
You carry around one of those rotary phones, sir?
Yeah, I do. It's not easy to carry around one of those big rotary phones in my pocket, but I do it. My old phone was one of those kind that had the crank on the side.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that I'm a technological troglodyte. Pretty close, but yeah. So anyhow, today is no different from the usual daily news pattern. They run something from the USAA, as it were, from the USA stockpile of editorial material. Actually, USA Today stockpile of anti-Trump material, and posted on the editorial page of the Daily News as though we give a darn. And of course we don't. Today is no exception. Here is the opposing view. Trump is good at identifying problems. This is from James Andrew Lewis, special to the USA Today. So, no, kung si James Andrew Lewis? Kwa tungo na tungo tauta no de maske non kanai hafe like si James Andrew Lewis tungo tauta. Who cares what James Lewis says? So that's it for the Daily News. You lost already, Daily News, and the game just began. And we have the Post. Attitude and systemic change needed to improve homelessness. Now, this would almost cause me to be sarcastic. Attitude. You know, just tell these homeless folks to move into a house and they'd be fine. It's just like that time, Real Joe Cruz, when you were telling me about you've been stricken with insomnia. Want to know what my advice was? I said, just get a good night's sleep. You'll be fine. So here we are with homelessness. Each Sunday over the past 5 weeks, the Guam Daily Post has explored the various issues related to our community's challenge with homelessness. We've seen the faces of our community's homeless population shift over the past decade or so. There were homeless people on the streets on Guam, but the highly visible ones were typically single individuals, mostly men, begging for money. In the last several years, our homeless population, at least the ones we've seen in public places, has changed. We've begun noticing families, many with young children, out in the streets and parking lots asking for money. We've seen elderly women, too. We've seen able-bodied homeless men getting in trouble repeatedly, giving credence to those who say they want to land in prison where they're going to be assured of food and shelter. In some of these cases, drug addiction of a household member or former breadwinner has been a contributing factor, based on our previous reporting on this issue. However, there is also a more complex problem that our community needs to delve into if we're to find meaningful solutions. The deeper problem has to do with the mindset that thinks it's okay for some able-bodied adults in our community to give up trying and not find work even for part of the day. Diana Calvo, Executive Director of Catholic Social Services, which partners with the Guam Homeless Coalition to offer services to the homeless on Guam, acknowledged in one of our homeless series of stories that the island could use more efforts to help individual families before they lose their homes or slide into deeper hopelessness that often comes with being homeless. A reliable mass transportation system will help our low-income individuals get a job and keep a job even when they can't afford a vehicle. A mass shelter that provides overnight beds, showers, and a simple warm breakfast can go a long way to help people become employed and end life on the streets. But as important as government, faith-based, and other nonprofit services are, many way out of homelessness. A way out of homelessness begins with changing attitudes towards self-reliance, according to Calvo. She's right. A community that only offers social safety nets but also promotes and encourages families toward being self-reliant really is crucial. How's that old saying goes? Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, he can feed himself for a lifetime. Give a man a Quest card and he'll vote Democrat forever. Isn't that how it goes? I think so, yeah. Federally funded housing and food stamp programs are some of the biggest forms of assistance for our low-income family survival. These programs should be tied to more stringent requirements to get a job and keep a job. Well, that's a radical approach. It kind of reminds me of Joe Biden on the campaign trail back in 2016. Joe Biden said, There's a three-word way of expressing the real issue in this campaign. Three words. J, as you were, three letters. J-O-B-S, jobs. Yeah. Joe is still a mathematical genius. These programs should not be provided in perpetuity with no strings attached. Providing an end date with ample notices will serve as a wake-up call for people to strive harder. While these programs are a big help, about 27% of Guam's population have been on food stamps. That's been a case for at least a decade, give or take 1 percentage point change. We must keep on caring for our homeless children and the elderly. But for the able-bodied adults, it's time for our government to set deadlines to weed them off government assistance. Perpetual public assistance will enable many adults and their children and their children's children to keep things the way they are. We cannot be enablers anymore. Well, I certainly agree with the sentiments of that editorial, and I'm going to award it the Blue Star, if for no other reason than, once again, the Daily News didn't provide any competition whatsoever. Talk about not even trying. The Daily News. I maybe shouldn't be even mentioning the Daily News because maybe I'm an enabler. Yeah, they don't even try. Maybe we should give them someone who can write editorials for them. Maybe the other Governor Leon Guerrero could work part-time for them writing editorials. So back to the Post editorial. I agree in substance with what the editorial says. However, I told you this before, Real Joe Cruz, it kind of reminds me about how my dad told me how to catch a robin. You know, all we got to do with these homeless folks is tell them, you got to get a job. And if you get a job, you can get food stamps and you can get this, that, or the other thing. If you don't get a job, you can't get them. I'm afraid that the response in many cases is, okay. You know, I don't see that the problem is a lack of opportunity to work, nor do I see it as a problem of the wrong attitude towards work. And we went through this before, but, you know, to say that this entire group all of these people together as the homeless, I think is a big mistake, because there are plenty of different reasons for a person being homeless. there is a situation where a person has a job and a family and a house, etc., and either because of some bad decisions on, I was about to say his part, but I caught myself, real Joe Cruz, bad decisions on their part, things turned to ashes, and the job was lost, rent couldn't be paid, so the man or woman or them had to move out of their house and had to start living on the street. I think that happens very, very seldom. Although the last time we talked about this, we did have a caller who said that that's exactly what had happened to him in Denver. That he had a house, he had a pretty good life, and I think it was a work-related injury, and he lost his job, and he was never able to get it all back together. Then we have people on the street who, because as long as they can get their drugs, they don't care where they live. And the less money they have to spend on a place to live, the more money they have to spend on drugs. Since 1975, the law in the United States has been that you cannot involuntarily commit someone to an institution unless he's a danger to himself or dangers to another. So a person could be loonier than a bat. He could be delusional. He could think that he's the Emperor Napoleon and that everyone around him are his French subjects in his army. And because of that, he's incapable of really doing anything except sleeping on the street. But given the state of our law, that person cannot be involuntarily committed to an institution. And given his mental condition, he's not going to want to do it. So there's that category of people. There are other people who have various kinds of personality dysfunctions who are not capable of holding down steady jobs. And then there are people who think, you know, I've heard about this too, that people are given the opportunity to move into a house and they say, no, I'm happier out here in the street. There's that. To take these 1,000 or so people and just refer to them as the homeless. We've got to solve the problem for the homeless. It ain't going to work. Because we'd have to develop some data as to how many of each of these categories there are, and have to probably develop a separate strategy for each category and not get our hopes up too high. People who really want to live on the streets are probably going to continue to live on the streets. So that's it for Demi Cotney. We gave the Blue Star to the Post today. It was an okay editorial. It wasn't a real barn burner. But the Daily News just offers so little competition so often that it's pretty easy for the Daily News to really run up the score, which is exactly what they've done. Where the score right now is Daily News 43 Blue Stars, the Post 124. Yeah. Okay, so I've got a card today. And the top item on the card is People versus Tory. Of course, that's the breaking news. And I suspect that that's what everybody wants to hear about. And there probably everybody out there in our international radio listening audience is saying others will talk about People versus Tory and the Supreme Court's reversal. But I'm going to tune into Tall Tales because I want to find out exactly how that whole mechanism works. And I know that Bob will explain it. So that's the first item on the card. I've got National Guard versus kids. I've got the Director of Agriculture versus Admiral Chatfield. Yeah, Admiral Chatfield. I've got Josh versus My Dollars. I've got Gwexit versus the folks, and Nelson versus the programmatic agreement, Gwexit versus the USMC, and so on. But I notice I got a call right now already from Jesse. Good afternoon, Jesse.
Yeah. Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, good afternoon. You know what? Judge, I just wanted to ask, you ever heard of the people of Guam versus Guerrero case where the
Rastaman, is that the one you're talking about?
Ben Guerrero?
Rastaman. Yeah.
Rastafari? Yeah, the Rastaman?
Rastaman, yeah, I know that case.
Yeah, so I was reading up on that, and I wanted to know, again, going back to how Guam is an unincorporated territory, and it was a pretty interesting read, and they were referencing some other cases here, and I just wanted to get your take on that, if that's actually what it, how Guam remains an unincorporated territory of the United States and subject to plenary power of Congress, and Guam versus Okada, I guess. I don't know if is that pretty accurate? I mean,
it's been a long time since I read the Rastaman case, but what are you driving at, Jesse?
What I'm driving at is as I guess we're just back again because of the discussion yesterday and about the independence versus or the Brexit or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
It just, I want to go back again to, you also told me once that the U.S. is a republic, not I forgot how you say it. It's a republic instead of a democracy or something like that.
It started out as a republic. I don't think that it is anymore. It's not a unitary democracy. That's probably what I said. It's the kind of thing I'm capable of saying, Jesse. And I probably said if Guam were a unitary democracy, it would be very easy to extend suffrage to Guam, but we're not. We're a republic, and the sovereignty is vested in the 50 states. That's where your political rights come from.
You said something about democracy, right? So I was just wondering about, it says Congress has the power to legislate directly for Guam or to establish a government for Guam subject to congressional control, and except as Congress may determine, Guam has no inherent right to govern itself.
That's right.
With the exception of certain fundamental rights, federal constitutional rights do not automatically apply to unincorporated territories.
The fancy way of saying that is that the Constitution doesn't apply in the unincorporated territories ex proprio vicare, Jesse. And I've probably said that 4 or 5 dozen times during the program, but go on.
Okay, so basically what this is saying is that, again, Congress just has the, you're saying that all we have to do is ask Congress for stuff we want. I mean, if that's the case, why do we even have a local legislature or a governor?
Because
Congress has all the power of this territory. And why are we even fighting this military buildup if all we have to do is why are we asking the governor and legislature to make a resolution when we should really be asking the Congress, who have the, obviously the unlimited power over Guam?
Okay, Jesse, Jesse, let's stop a second here and let's refine the rules of discussion. You're asking rhetorical questions. Okay? You're asking rhetorical questions, and because you are, it's difficult to carry on the conversation. But let me kind of set you straight, okay? Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution says that Congress has the ability to make needful rules and regulations for the governance of the territories, or territory or property of the United States. Let me find it here and read it to make sure I'm saying it right. The Congress shall have power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations respecting the territory or other property belonging to the United States, and nothing in this Constitution shall be so construed to prejudice any claims against the United States. Shall have the power to dispose of and make all needful rules and regulations. That's what Article 4, Section 3 says. So Congress has made almost no rules for the unincorporated territory of American Samoa. But Congress has made rules and regulations for the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Northern Marianas, and part of those rules and regulations are the Organic Act, which provides for civil government. Congress doesn't have to, but the 535 people in Congress probably don't want to spend a whole lot of time renaming streets on Guam. So they've delegated that power to us with the Organic Act. The Organic Act, if you read People versus Guerrero, you'd see that we shot ourselves in the foot because we don't have our own Constitution. When the Ninth Circuit read People versus Guerrero, we attempted to make sort of a quasi-sovereignty argument that would have recognized the kind of the peyote exception to the laws against importation of drugs. But the Ninth Circuit says, you know, the Organic Act is just another federal constitution. We're good at interpreting federal constitutions. There's nothing that the folks in Guam know about it that we don't know ourselves. But if Guam had enacted its own constitution, then it would be entitled to a certain amount of deference. That's what they said. Now, this is back in the days when appeals went from the Guam Supreme Court to the Ninth Circuit instead of the U.S. Supreme Court. And that's the kind of stuff that I mean when I say that we have the ability to get a lot of the stuff that we want here. But the place to get it from is Congress. And it's not just, all you have to do is ask any more than when real Joe Cruz wanted a bicycle for Christmas. It was a little more complicated than all he had to do was ask his mother. You know, you go to Congress, Jesse. You go to Congress and you make a case. And if your case is valid, you have a pretty good chance of getting where you want to go. When we started out here in 1950, the only real local branch of the government was the legislature. The governor was appointed by Washington. We didn't have a Washington rep. The only court we had was the U.S. District Court. But we asked Congress to change the Organic Act so we could elect our own governor, et cetera. And now we've got a full measure of self-government because we asked Congress for it. We didn't screw around with the Fourth Committee and ask them to put pressure on the United States. I got a break coming up, Jesse. If you want to carry this on after the break, just hang on, okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
GPSI Guam is a professional services company that is a registered contractor for the federal government. They're an SBA, 8A, and Hub Zone certified SDVOSB, providing program/project management, administration, technical support, logistics, and commodities. Find out more about GPSI and how they can help you today. For large prime companies, contact GPSI if you need assistance in meeting your small business subcontracting goals at 477-3058. They'll be happy to assist.
The summer of Jeep, Compass, Cherokee, Wrangler, Cars Plus in Mighty. Your new adventure starts now. Buy the 2019 Motor Trend SUV of the year and get a new Jeep Wrangler Sport for $268 per paycheck. Or get a new Jeep Compass Sport, only $167 per paycheck. Let them hear you coming in the new 2019 Jeep Cherokee. Buy for $205 per paycheck. And get financing as low as 1.99% on all Jeep models. Come see why you'll be kicking it at Cars Plus in Mighty. Driven by you.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
888-TALK. 888-8255. We're Facebook Live. You can post a comment on Facebook. You can listen to Jesse and I have our almost daily tete-a-tete about Gwexit and related subjects. Jesse, I can spend a little more time with you, but I want to get to the Supreme Court case overturning the verdict in the Tory case. Okay?
Yeah, because I want to hear about that too as well. Yeah.
Okay. So
we'll get back on that some other time, I guess.
So that's the point that I keep making, Jesse, that, you know, we've never actually tried to decolonize Guam. This commission that we have down in Adelup has never made a move to, quote, decolonize Guam. And it's not about Guam, it's about Chamorros. And I suppose that some people would say, well, you know, Chamorros are Guam. But that probably isn't the way everybody else would see it. But that's, so far, that's it. And the way the thing is set up, it's kind of like a fish trap. You can swim in, but you can't swim back out, because the only viable option amongst the so-called three choices is independence.
Right.
I've explained that before.
Yeah, that's already been established. Yeah.
And a lot of people, myself included, don't want to see Guam become an independent country. So my answer has been this: before we go farther down this road and build even greater misunderstandings than the ones that we already have, we should have a single vote, a vote with a single question on it. Should Guam separate from the United States and become an independent sovereign country? Yes or no? I wouldn't even care who voted. But until we answer that question, we're just spending a lot of money and spinning our wheels and creating a lot of confusion.
So just one point before you go. You don't recognize that the Chamorro people have a right to, the indigenous Chamorro people, or the native, as they tried to describe it before. If you were born here before 1950 and all that stuff, you don't feel that those group of people have the right to self-determination?
Do you?
Yes, I do.
Okay, then explain three sentences, Jesse. Explain to me why.
Well, I just, the United Nations says that they made a declaration of, for all indigenous people.
Okay, that one.
I'm just basically, going off that, and it seems everybody around this region around Guam has had that right to do so, and I'm just wondering, what about the Chamorros living on Guam?
So your basic reason is because the United Nations said so. Well, if you listen to Tall Tales very often, you'll understand that there are few organizations that I have less contempt for than the United Nations, and that is not a persuasive reason, Jesse. That's
the reason is, for me, is the Filipinos did it, the Palauans did it, the Chukis did it, they were all under, and they obviously cited that they have a right to have a self-determination, so, and they did, and they voted, their people.
How about the Northern Marianas?
They did that too. That's how they became a Commonwealth.
Uh-huh.
And at the time, I remember there was a thing where Guam was supposed to join up with the Marianas, but at the time we were just elect the right to have our first governor elected. So local politics came in. The whole issue between Saipan and Guam, there was a lot going on there as well. And then the whole talks just broke up, and that was we lost the unity on that part.
It wasn't that the talks broke up. Guam voted against it.
No, yeah, because there was a lot of, again, there was just not a lot of people that really knew. They didn't really want to move on it, because there was people in Saipan they were getting paid lower than the people on Guam were. There was the candidates were like, oh, let's not get into that issue anymore, even though they were for.
But they were all Chamorros, Jesse.
Yeah, and it was a lot of it.
Isn't that the touchstone?
It's a lot of our fault, but again, we're the people that are in our generation we're just left in the balance and hanging on it, because our.
Let me tell you something, Jesse. I can't tell you how shocked I was when I woke up one morning when I was 18 years old, and I looked around and I picked up a book and I said, I'm not going to have the right to self-determination. This is awful. And I never did. I've never had the right of self-determination.
Because you're part of America already, though. Your parents did that.
But when was this right of self-determination exercised?
Well, it was exercised when U.S. became a independent nation.
But I wasn't there then.
Well, your parents.
I didn't get a chance to choose.
But they.
My parents didn't get a chance to choose.
So they weren't in the. I don't know.
They weren't that old, Jesse. I wasn't born in the 1700s.
Yeah.
And then let's look at it your way. Let's say that you get a chance to somehow exercise what you consider to be your personal right of self-determination. What about the people that come along 30 or 40 years from now? Do they get it too?
I don't know, but they're...
You don't know?
No, we should. They should. We can't, because again, just like if the U.S. wants to say, okay, let's not be an independent nation anymore, the people can certainly do that.
Yeah, but you make it sound like it's a personal right.
Yeah, because all I'm saying, Bob, is other ethnicities around Guam, their people have had the right to self-determination. What about the people in Guam?
So if everybody else is doing it, we should get to do it too. Do you think the people in
I'm not I'm talking about the people that were when Guam was annexed to the United States.
Yeah, in 1898. What happened to the rest of these people?
Yeah, well, they had the Philippine War. Is that what it's going to take?
What happened? What happened to Chuk and the people in the FSM? What's now the FSM? Where did they go?
Where they ended up becoming. There was a trust. That trust.
Didn't they become German colonies, Jesse?
Yeah, they did. And then after the Japanese, the U.S. took it back again. They assumed it, and then that's when they did the vote in the 80s.
And
all I'm saying is why do these people get that right to do so, and not the people on Guam? That's all. And then why are we even part of something that can be taken away so easily from us? That just doesn't seem right.
And who is the we?
I'm talking the Chamorro people. The people.
Okay, so this is all about Chamorro people. This is not about Guam. It's not about the territory of Guam. It's not about the people of Guam. It's about Chamorro people.
Live on the land, eh? The people have to live on the land.
Yeah, I own a piece of land myself that I live on. In fact, I go home every night, and in the privacy of my own home, I attempt to enjoy myself.
Exactly, and but what that's what I'm saying. How do you give? I guess there is no justice for the Chamorros. Then they're just by default we can't participate in this because there's people like Bob who have a house already and are living here and everything.
When did the quote Chamorros ever ask for independence, Jesse?
They did during that walkout.
Ask for independence?
When they tried to do the Organic Act, that was their best shot at it.
Yeah, and my recollection of history is that in 1936, two senior citizens from Guam, B.J. Bordallo and F.B. Leon Guerrero, collected money to go to Washington to beg the Congress to grant citizenship to the people of Guam. 1936.
Right.
And then after the war, in the so-called walkout, there was a dispute over whether or not the naval governor would enforce a subpoena issued by the Guam Congress. And he said no, he wasn't going to do it. It was at that time that the members of the Guam Congress adjourned and wouldn't go back into session, even though the governor called them back into session. And it was at that time that the delegation from Guam, primarily Carlos Taitano, asked for citizenship and asked for civil government. Nobody asked for independence.
Well, I'm sorry. The resolution for the UN was adopted. General Assembly was in December 14, 1960. So I guess after that, that's what I'm trying to say is I'm sorry I don't have all my stuff in front of me, but because I just want to talk about our rights being taken away.
What right was taken away?
Also our rights taken away as
what right was taken away?
No, a right that can be taken away. Because if we're in an unincorporated territory, the Congress has the power to take that back, and that's the difference between me living on Guam as an American versus me living in the States, in the United States.
Tremendous difference, Jesse. Jesse, it's been a lot of fun, and feel free to call tomorrow. But I want to get on to people versus Tory. Okay.
I just want to say that's I mean, they can take it away from us, though, right? If they wanted to, the Congress, right? I mean, something that's probably far fetched, but is that the law? That's what I'm trying to ask.
If Congress repealed the Organic Act there would be no more Organic Act. But anyone who is a citizen of the United States would continue to be a citizen of the United States, even though the Organic Act were repealed.
Even if it was repealed, we could still be U.S. citizens.
You'd still be a U.S. citizen, unless you went to a foreign consulate and renounced your citizenship.
No, but you're saying the United Constitution protects us still, even if without the Organic Act?
In certain respects, remember what you mentioned when you first started about certain fundamental rights, even though Congress has plenary power?
Mm-hmm.
Remember that?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you go back and take a look at that, and we can pick that up tomorrow. But I got to get to People versus Tory, okay?
Okay, thanks. Have a good one.
Thanks. Okay, I got our Carl on the line. Hello, Carl.
Hey, Bob. I'll try to keep this short because I know you want to get on to the Tory case, and I'm really going to be fascinated with what you have to say about that. But I just want to say, regarding this issue of people who can participate in this plebiscite born after a certain or here before a certain date. What about the poor people that arrived 12:01 a.m. January 1951? It completely ignores and shuts out over 65% of the island that does not have Chamorro blood. It would shut out my wife, who came here and worked extremely hard for 30 years and helped me raise a family. It would shut out my father, who came here and worked for over 2 decades, the best he could to contribute to the island. All these people, over 65% of the island, pay taxes, they vote, they obey our laws, they contribute to the forward movement of the island. The only crime they've committed is not having a certain bloodline. And I have Chamorro blood, so I could qualify, but I really have a problem if my wife was alive, if my father was alive, if they would not have a voice in a decision that would affect them and will affect these tens of thousands of people for many, many, many decades into the future. So I think, all this about, not being fair, what about the fairness to these poor people that contribute so much to the forward movement of the island?
Once you grab a hold of identity politics, Carl, the ordinary concepts of fairness are out the window. And if you can latch on to something that some body called the UN said in 1960 as the foundation of your rights, then you're well on your way to really getting into identity politics. And that's where the Gwexit folks come from. It's pure identity politics leading from Gwexit to Guamocracy.
And as you pointed out, we're the ones that pursued citizenship with the United States for several years. We finally got it. For decades following that, when we finally got the Organic Act completed, we became U.S. citizens. There were no mass protests. There was no letter-writing campaigns or protests mounted at our leaders' offices demanding that they end this horrible oppression by America. It just didn't happen. And to me, this is an unofficial island-wide plebiscite every single day when there is no mass protests on a free island which has free speech, freedom of the press, all these freedoms.
You'd have to have that protest on the government of Guam holiday, Carl.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I want to hear what you have to say about the Tory case, but I just want to get my 2 bits in. Thank you for allowing me.
Okay, Carl, thanks. Okay, so the breaking news this morning was... Okay, I'll get there. Short break. We'll be right back.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. Our office is currently visiting our villages, providing contact information for our office, and taking any inquiries we may be of service with. All vehicles and staff are appropriately identified for your safety. Please feel free to let our constituent outreach team know how we can be of service to you, and thank you for your kindness.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Hey, Hey, welcome to this Subway ad for the new club collection. How do you want it?
I'll take a book club.
Absolutely.
So, last week we sunk our teeth into Subway's meaty new release, the Steak Club.
I didn't finish it yet.
Oh, not again, Sandra. This week, it's the new Southwest Chicken Club, also by Subway. No spoilers, but there's a tasty twist.
Jalapeno cheddar bread and guacamole?
Sandra, get out. Subway, make it what you want.
Good ending.
Limited time only at participating restaurants.
Okay, so here we are. 10 more minutes until the big halftime show. This morning, the Supreme Court a decision reversing the Tory case was announced. In other words, the conviction of Mark Tory for and the murder in the actually it wasn't a murder case. I think it was finally manslaughter of killing a police officer named Piolo was reversed, which means that as we sit here right now, Mark Tory is not guilty. And the reason it was reversed was because inadmissible evidence, the trial judge allowed what turned out to be inadmissible evidence to be heard by the jury. The inadmissible evidence was the product of a recording made by a police officer with his body cam when that police officer reported to the crime scene. Now, you're going to hear everybody saying, well, yeah, they didn't give him his Miranda rights. He wasn't Mirandized. And most people will say that and figure they really know what it means because they watch Law and Order and they've seen Lenny Briscoe. Yeah, they've seen Lenny Briscoe very sarcastically slap the cuffs on the guy and have some quip like, the guy says, I've got to meet with my clients. Well, you'll have plenty of clients at Rikers. You have a right to remain silent, etc. So why do we start doing that? Where did all of this come from? Here's where it came from. There is a section in the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution that says, no person shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. Now, back in those days, if they were just talking about one person, they referred to that one person as himself instead of referring to that one person as them. We're so much better at it nowadays, right, Real Joe Cruz? Yeah. No person shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. So the courts interpreted that to mean that any out-of-court statement by the defendant in a criminal case that's offered into evidence before the jury, that statement has to be voluntary. It can't be coerced out of the defendant with a rubber hose or that bright light shining in his eyes. If you ever watched film noir movies, you know how we used to extract confessions from defendants. So in order for the confession to be admissible in trial, it had to be voluntary, and it was the prosecution's duty to prove that it was voluntary. And, of course, the defendant would bend over backward, do everything that they could to convince the court that the confession wasn't voluntary. Well, this got to be pretty judicially intense because so many cases turned on confessions, and there would be a significant amount of time spent on determining whether or not what the defendant said, his outside of court statement, was voluntary or not. And witnesses would have a small trial just over that one question. So finally in 1966, the Supreme Court decided it was tired of dealing with these cases on a one-off basis and put their black robes away for a while and decided that they would be a legislature and that they would enact what judicial commenters call a judicial statute. And they said, unless the prosecution can show that before the defendant made his statement, he was told that he had a right to remain silent, that whatever he said could be used against him in court, that if he couldn't afford a lawyer would be provided for him, etc. If the prosecution couldn't do that, then the judge would say that statement is not admissible because you haven't shown us that it's voluntary. Now, there are some exceptions to that, like everything that lawyers do, but that's the general rule. And so you hear people talking in terms of Miranda rights, because the case in which this arose was United States versus Ernesto Miranda. And Miranda was the one who made the what was held to be the involuntary confession. So in the process of ruling in Miranda's favor, the court enacted that judicial statute. And that's been the part of the law since 1966. Congress tried to do away with it once. Court is very jealous of its powers. Didn't let Congress get to first base with it. So that's where the so-called Miranda rights came from. And you hear people say, well, yeah, they arrested me, but they didn't give me my rights, so they got to let me go, right? No. The only purpose of the Miranda warning is to make sure that whatever the defendant says, whatever, if anything, can be used in a court of law. Okay, so that's the background of the necessity that a confession be voluntary. So then the next question comes up here in the Tory case. When does that voluntariness requirement arise? And it arises when the defendant's liberty is restricted. So if a cop walked up to the real Joe Cruz, I better use a different example. This one might be too realistic. If a cop walks up to somebody on the street and said, "Did you rob the bank last night?" And the guy says, "Yeah." The cop says, "How much you get?" "Oh, it wasn't much of a robbery. I only got about $1,500. Cop can arrest him. He can use that statement against the robber in court, etc., because the robber is not in custody. His liberty is not restricted. So now a lot of the argument is not over the question of voluntariness, but over the question of, was the defendant in custody? Was his liberty restricted? And the test is something along these lines. It's a reasonable person test. Would a reasonable, considering all the facts and circumstances, would a reasonable person think that he had the ability to terminate the interview and get up and leave? If the answer is yes, then whatever he says would be voluntary. If the answer is no, then it would not be voluntary. And that's what the court found here. The Supreme Court found that when the cops came to Tory's house, one cop who happened to be wearing a body cam at the time interviewed Tory for about 40 minutes. And in the process, according to the last page of the decision here, apparently Tory made some inculpatory statements. Inculpatory meaning, culpability, tending to bring blame to himself, as opposed to exculpatory, which is the opposite. The court said Tory appears to have made inculpatory statements during the interrogation. So apparently those inculpatory statements were used at Tory's trial. Okay, we got a 8-minute break coming up here for that big halftime show, and then I'll come back and wrap up the Tory case, and then I'll go to National Guard versus kids, which is just keep your Law and Order notebooks out for that one.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
There's still a shot. Armature Jordan, Fox News Attorney General William Barr says he believes there's a way to get a question on citizenship added to next year's census. But Barr did not provide details on how that might be accomplished.
The Justice Department announcing late Sunday that it was replacing the team of lawyers that have spent the past year defending the citizenship question in court. That move came just days after DOJ attorneys told a federal judge that they were caught off guard by President Trump's announcement that he still wanted the question on the census. After the Supreme Court ruled against it, the administration hopes to add the citizenship question to the 2020 census, materials for which are already being printed at the White House. John Decker, Fox News.
Financier Jeffrey Epstein pleaded not guilty to federal charges. He sexually abused dozens of underage girls. The charges come over a decade after Florida authorities struck a secret deal with him on similar allegations. The British ambassador to the U.S. is under fire after leaked memos reveal he called the Trump administration diplomatically clumsy and inept.
UK authorities are now trying to track down the person who leaked the high-level information, which is thought to have been gathered over the past 2 years. If caught, the leaker could be prosecuted under the Official Secrets Act in the UK. There are questions, too, as to how this embarrassing leak might impact UK-US relations. In London, Kitty Logan, Fox News.
The U.S.'s carbon emissions rose in 2018. EPA Administrator Andrew Wheeler outlined the Trump administration's efforts to address climate change, and he said he believes climate change is man-made.
Man does contribute to climate change, and it is happening, and we do have to address it. But the law tells us we have to address it as well. The Supreme Court has told us, and we are following the law, and we're following the Supreme Court.
Environmental activists say the president has sought to roll back environmental protections, including withdrawing the U.S. from the Paris Climate Accord. This is Fox News.
Hafaday, this is Congressman Nicholas. Our office is currently visiting our villages, providing contact information for our office and taking any inquiries we may be of service with. All vehicles and staff are appropriately identified for your safety. Please feel free to let our constituent outreach team know how we can be of service to you, and thank you for your kindness.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
65 years ago, Bank Pacific opened its doors to our community. As we celebrate, we offer you a special 65th anniversary personal loan rate for as low as 4.65%. For travel, back to school, a wedding, do whatever you want with the money. During July, we just want to give it to you for as low as 4.65% APR. It's our birthday present to you.
Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal opportunity lender, member FDIC, conditions apply.
A woman in South Carolina is facing multiple charges after allegedly stealing a car and threatening a driver with an unexpected weapon.
It was a crazy day in Greenville, South Carolina, near the site of the Liberty Bridge jump-off. That's a pole vaulting exhibition which had barricades set up around it. 29-year-old Hilmary Moreno Barrios is charged with crashing a stolen SUV through those barricades on Friday. Nobody was hurt, but police tell Fox News this lady confronted the owner of the SUV and demanded the keys. That's when she pulled out a black snake and threw it at the driver. She took off in the vehicle, the non-poisonous snake still inside, and that's when she crashed through the barricades. Now she's charged with carjacking along with many other violations. The police released the snake into the woods on its own cognizance. John Saucier, Fox News.
President Trump's latest planned tariffs could have an unusual side effect, a shortage of Bibles. Millions of copies of the Holy Book are printed in China each year. The proposed 25% tariff would apply to all books. President Trump and President Xi Jinping of China agreed to resume trade negotiations last month, which puts all proposed tariffs on hold for now. 2 gloves from the Chicago Cubs' 2016 World Series win are headed to the auction block.
Chicago Cubs fans have a chance to own 2 pieces of history.
This is going to be a tough play. Bryant, the Cubs win the World Series!
The gloves from that famed final out that gave the Cubbies their first World Series win in 108 years, audio courtesy of Fox. The Game 7 mitts from 2016 from Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo have been obtained by Golden Auctions, both mitts signed and inscribed by the Cubs stars. Online bidding now underway for the 2 pieces that are being sold as a package deal, with reports it could fetch as much as $750,000. The auction closes August 1st. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
One of 7 dolphins at Maryland's National Aquarium has died after a month months-long illness related to digestive issues. The aquarium says the dolphin was euthanized over the weekend. I'm Richard Jordan, and this is Fox News.
Get a Coke 12-pack for only $3.49 when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy. Get a dozen extra-large eggs for only 49 cents when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy. Get a case of Circle K water for only $2.99 when you fuel up on $35 or more of premium high-performance fuel. Conditions apply. See stores for details. Circle K. Take it easy.
Family Finance has been serving the people of Guam since 1959, and they'll continue to be there for you in the years to come. Whether you're looking to get a personal loan for that summer vacation or paying off those long overdue bills, Family Finance has got you covered. Apply for a personal loan from $1,000 up to $3,600 by calling Family Finance in Agutya at 475-4545, Upper Tumon at 647-5626, or in Dededo 633-4473. Family Finance, serving the people of Guam since 1959.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
So here we are again after that gigantic halftime show that we all know and love so well. It means that we're now in the second half of Tall Tales, and I'm commenting on the Supreme Court's reversal of the Tory conviction. I've explained the doctrine of self-incrimination, voluntariness, etc., and pointed out that the Supreme Court determined that at the time that Tory was being questioned with a police officer who was wearing a body cam, a reasonable person, being aware of all the facts and circumstances, would not have felt that he could have terminated the interrogation and left. And some of the facts involved were there were 4 police cars there that night. They had surrounded Tory's house. A police officer who was questioning him had to leave for a few moments. When he did, he had another police officer stand by Tory, making apparently causing Tory to think that he was in custody. And so upon the determination of all the facts and circumstances as reported in the trial court's decision, the Supreme Court decided that Tory's statements were not voluntary and therefore should be suppressed. The other interesting aspect of this case is that there's a doctrine of what's called harmless error in court cases. Harmless error means that if a prosecution commits an error, if a court commits an error, and the evidence was so strong that even without the harmless error, the defendant would have been convicted, then it's held that the error is harmless and would not be grounds to set aside the conviction. So if the prosecution had been able to convince the court that the admission of Tory's involuntary statements were harmless error, no reversal. But here's kind of the eye-opener here. On the last page of the decision, the burden is on the government to establish that the error was harmless, as I've just described. In this case, the people have failed to argue the error was harmless. Since the government didn't argue harmless error, then the Supreme Court's not in a position to say, yeah, the statement was involuntary. However, there's enough evidence to show beyond a reasonable doubt that Tory's guilty, therefore the error is harmless. The government didn't make that argument. Now, there are a couple of reasons why the government didn't make the argument, a couple of reasons that I could think of. One, maybe the government didn't think of it. Not too likely. Or two, the government attorneys didn't think that they could make a good faith argument that there would have been a conviction without those statements that were made to the body cam. Now, if it's number two, it's going to be very difficult to get a conviction the second time around. As the conviction was reversed, it means Tory's not guilty right now. It also means that the prosecution can go forward and try again. But they can't use any of the evidence on the body cam tape. So if that evidence that was on the body, that inculpatory evidence, was so essential to the conviction, and that evidence is not going to be available to the prosecution, then it would make it very unlikely that the prosecution could get a guilty verdict the second time around. So our Attorney General's got some decisions to make tonight. Is he going to retry Tory, dismiss the case? Hard questions, because if he dismisses the case, you can bet everybody out there in the community is going to see this as just one more machete attack. You know, we go out and arrest, even when we catch a guy with a gun in his hand, the courts are still going to let him go. That's what people are going to say. If the prosecution tries it, retries it without the evidence from the body cam, and the guilt comes back with a not guilty verdict, it'd probably be bad. It won't be quite as bad as not prosecuting at all, but it would be bad. But prosecutors have ethics, and they're not supposed to prosecute a case unless they think they've got a reasonable chance of proving beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty. So this is going to be a tough one. These are tough cases. These cases that turn on constitutional rights, improper search and seizure, involuntary confessions. The public doesn't like them at all, because in the public's mind, well, he was guilty, and they let him off on a technicality. I can understand that thinking, but, you know, from where I sit, my orientation, the Constitution shouldn't be regarded as a technicality. I have some problems with the whole voluntariness thing about confessions, but I wouldn't want to go back to the situation we had before the courts invented the whole Miranda statute. Same with search and seizure. You know, if the evidence found in a search is bad because the Fourth Amendment was violated, then that evidence can't be used at trial. And that can lead to some really bizarre results where the defendant is caught robbing a paint store. He's caught with his hand in a bucket of red paint. But because the search was bad, you can't admit that you can't use the red painted evidence. So it's the price you pay for a constitutional government with an independent judiciary. So from what I read of the decision here, I didn't follow this case any more closely than any of you did. I've watched it on TV. I read about it in the papers. But I'd say probably the Supreme Court, based on what I've read, made the right decision. We wouldn't want people to be convicted because the people demand it. That's how the lynch mob mechanism works. So when we think in terms of judges, I suppose people have the tendency to think, well, by God, if I was a judge, I'd sock it to them. I'd lock them up and throw the key away, etc. But being a judge, like being a lot of other things, you really don't get to decide things based on what you think is right. You're often hemmed in by things like the law, ethics, the facts, etc. And so often these decision-making situations are not a choice between a really good decision and a really bad decision, but between two kind of bad decisions, and you got to choose the least worst. So that's it for the Tory case. I'm sure that every commentator on the block will put his 2 cents worth in about it today, tomorrow, when the newspaper comes out, the comment sections on the workups. It'd be nice if the Daily News would write an editorial about it. Of course, the Daily News would probably write an editorial about something that happened in the D.C. trial court rather than write about anything that happened here. Okay, next item on the calendar is the National Guard versus kids. And the title is FBI Arrests Guam Guardsman in Connection with Child Pornography. Okay, now it's the guardsman. Not because the guardsman did it. I'm not saying it's National Guard versus kids, but because the way the National Guard handled this. A release from the FBI states it was assisted by the Guam National Guard and Homeland Security investigations in the arrest. The Guam National Guard worked closely with the FBI in coordinating the arrest, which took place in Barragata, the release states. The arrest is the result of work being done by the Marianas Child Exploitation Human Trafficking Task Force, which combines the resources of the FBI with other federal and local law enforcement agencies to work together to prevent, stop, counter all threats of abuse and exploitation to children living in Guam and the CNMI. Now, according to court, the defendant in this case is kind of a funny article. The guy's name is Jerry Thomas Guerrero. According to court documents, Guerrero was accused of recording sex acts with a 14-year-old girl. Jerry Thomas Guerrero, too, met the teen in 2017 through Snapchat, documents state. Police confirmed the girl sent a message to Guerrero telling him she was underage, documents state. She and Guerrero had sex about 10 times between October 17 and March 2018, according to the court complaint. Police in 2018 found out that Guerrero recorded videos of the pair having sex, and officers got a search warrant for Guerrero's cell phone. Guerrero was charged with electronic enforcement of a child as first-degree felony, 4 counts of third-degree criminal sexual conduct as second-degree felonies, and 3 counts of possession of child pornography as second-degree felonies. Although Guerrero, as you were, this is not a very clearly written article. Anyhow, that's what he was busted for. Having sex with a minor, filming it, possessing it, etc. So that's a pretty serious rap, right? And this article says that the FBI arrested him and was assisted by the Guam National Guard. And here's a statement from the Adjutant General of the Guam National Guard. Today's arrest sends a powerful message to predators across the islands. The FBI's mission is to protect citizens, especially the most vulnerable members of our community, our children. We will be vigilant to help those who cannot protect themselves. FBI Honolulu Acting Special Agent Charge Rafael Riviere said. And then This is from the Adjutant General. There is no tolerance for depraved conduct, such as sexual exploitation of minors and the Guam National Guard. We continue to work closely with law enforcement to root out predators and protect the island's youth. Adjutant General of the Guam National Guard, Major General Esther Agagi said. Well, that sounds pretty good, right? The FBI caught him. Agagi said the right thing, etc. But as Paul Harvey would say, now I'm going to tell you the rest of the story. According to documents, Guerrero was accused of recording sex acts Okay. All of the stuff I just mentioned, police confirmed the message was sent to Guerrero, etc. He was charged with electronic enticement, on and on and on. And then, this goes back to last year, although Guerrero was charged in local court for these same crimes, there was no judgment in that case about a year ago. And as of Monday, he was still employed with the National Guard, said Major Josephine Bloss, Public Affairs Officer for the Guam National Guard. So he'd been charged in local court. There was a magistrate's complaint, meaning that a prosecutor had signed papers saying this is what had happened. But nothing happened to Jerry Guerrero until the FBI got a hold of it. It boggles the mind to think that the National Guard didn't know about this when the local case was proceeding. But the National Guard did nothing. And here's the reason the National Guard did nothing. A person is innocent until proved guilty, and the local case had not been resolved. So Guerrero remained employed with the Guard. It's just unbelievable. He's charged with all these heavy-duty things in local court, and for reasons we don't know, the case didn't go forward, but a magistrate's complaint was filed. But according to Josephine Bloss, the Guard didn't do anything because the case wasn't brought to conclusion. And everybody knows, this is right in there with a personnel matter. A person is innocent until proved guilty, and the local case had not been resolved. So Guerrero remained employed with the Guard. As soon as those local charges were brought, he should have been fired, and he should have been banned from ever coming aboard the Guard post. Misconduct. And I've been through this a couple of times before. A person who is on trial in a criminal case is presumed innocent until proven guilty. Before that, no. And I've given this crazy example before. Let's say that Real Joe Cruz has a store, and he keeps really close track of his cash drawer, and every day he's about $25 short in his cash drawer, and he keeps real close track of his cash. He's only got one cashier. Only one person has access to the cash drawer. And Real Joe says, man, you know, it's hard to make a profit when I'm losing $25 every day. He says it to his friend. And his friend says, why don't you fire Jimmy? Why would I want to fire Jimmy? Because he's stealing money out of your cash drawer every day. How do you know that? He brags about it. And Real Joe Cruz says, well, everybody's innocent until proven guilty. So until he's proven guilty, I got to keep him on the job, and I got to let him steal $25 every day. Yeah, it just doesn't work that way. So if someone is a sex criminal in the National Guard and you know about it, this is the public relations person for the Guam National Guard, Major Josephine Bloss. A person is innocent until proven guilty, and the local case had not been resolved, so Guerrero remained employed with the Guard. The only thing she didn't say was that it was a personnel matter. So, you know, with a spokesman like that, now I don't know if Josephine Bloss is saying this because it's the position of the Adjutant General, or if it's just something that she came up with by herself. But I was just mentioning Real Joe Cruz. She didn't get into, it's a personnel matter, so I don't want to talk about it, but it's as nonsensical as that for someone who is supposed to be the public affairs officer for the National Guard to say something that's silly. You know, if you're going to make a public statement, the public statement could have been, we should have disciplined him when we found out what he had done. We screwed up. But instead of that, the person's innocent until proved guilty. And the local case had not been resolved, so Guerrero remained employed with the Guam Guard. That's why I've styled this case National Guard versus Kids. With this kind of an attitude, you can't really depend on the Guard to be looking out for your kids' best interests. All right. Moving right along to the next item on the case, on the file here, is the Director of Agriculture versus Shoshana Chatverus. No, that's not right, is it? What is it?
It's Schatzfeld.
Schatzlist?
Schatzfeld, Schatzlist.
Chatfield.
Chatfield.
Shoshana Chatfield, yeah. All right, and I've got a letter here from Shoshana Chatfield to the Honorable Lourdes A. Leon Guerrero, the governor. And she says, among other things, the Ceranthus nelsoni is a single species endemic to Guam and Luta. Within any species, genetic variation is normal and actually contributes to the long-term health of population. In the 2016 five-year recovery plan review, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service recommended using the Nelsoni from Rota to increase Guam's population and encourage genetic mixing. While it is important to better understand the genetic variances between Guam and Rota trees, this information will not change the endangered status of the species. Regardless of the research findings, the Nelsoni adult tree and outplanting seedlings remain fully protected with protective measures in place. It just completely blows up this whole tree BS that the 13 had advanced. So we've got it, and Lou said, we've got to wait 6 months to see if this has the same DNA as the trees in Rota. And unfortunately for Lou, Chatfield knows what she's talking about. And she says those genetic variations are healthy, you know? And we know that from the way humans work. That's why the royal families of Europe were so often stricken with hemophilia. They didn't bring in enough outside genetic material, and recessive genes tended to line up. Shoshana goes on to say, that sounds like something out of Jesus Christ Superstar, doesn't it? One of the Yvonne Elements song, Shoshana. I wonder if that's who she was named after. We are successfully raising the Guam tree seeds for our military conservation areas. Under the 2015 biological opinion, the Navy has committed to outplanting at least 30 Nelsoni saplings and maintaining these saplings until maturity. This is in addition to over 200 seedlings propagated for outplanting on Anderson, 41 of which are currently outplanted and 160 are being raised in the nursery. The saplings currently growing under the Nelsoni are being protected from tests and ungulates until maturity. You know what an ungulate is? A pig or a deer.
Oh.
Yeah, it wouldn't sound like much fun to say, I'm going to have fun this Saturday. I'm going to go out hunting ungulates.
Ungulates.
Yeah.
Nice.
Ungulate control for the protection of the trees includes fencing and then removing ungulates from the entire surrounding plateau area, including nearby planted ranges. The Navy understands that restoration of an endangered species and an enhancement of forest are long-term programs required a sustained effort for 30 or more years. I therefore seek your essential support for continuing collaboration with federal and Guam agencies and the Chamorro community to help ensure the success of this and other conservation endeavors. So what it comes down to, she also said, I share your concern for the mature Nelsoni tree. And then she says, it's a testament to military stewardship that the population of this species, which used to be distributed on Guam, has only been able to survive on military installations, not off base. Let me assure you that our mutual goal for protecting this tree, its saplings, and the approved forest buffer have already been met by permanently distancing the multi-purpose machine gun range sufficiently away. So this was in response to Lou's letter saying, can you hold off on the machine gun range for 6 months? Because we want to find out if our Nelson tree has a different DNA than the Nelson tree in Rhoda. Okay, time for the 7th inning stretch, and we'll come back and wrap this up. And I'll tell you how the Director of Agriculture gets involved here.
Let's go for a drive.
Let's take a stroll. Let's gallivant.
Let's go cruising.
We all have different ways to describe how we get up and go in our cars. But whatever you may call it, you can do more of it when you save 6% off your fuel purchases at any Shell station when you use your eligible Bank of Guam Visa and MasterCard credit cards. So stop by any Guam or CNMI Shell station and start saving today. Visit bankofguam.com for more information. Terms and conditions apply. Bank of Guam, the People's Bank. Member FDIC.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
So we've established that most of us have the issue with learning something, and just as quickly we seem to forget. I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we're going to talk about solutions, ways to make knowledge stick for the long term.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Talk Tells with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Bank Pacific, banking on the Pacific for 65 years.
Seventh inning stretch, center field bleachers, Wrigley Field. That means we only got 2 more innings left here on Tall Tales. And we have a Bank Pacific commercial that airs here on Tall Tales. And talking about trees, talking about the Nelson tree and all that stuff reminds me of when I did the morning gig when Ray was off island. And I used to read the Bank Pacific commercial then. And it really fits into the discussion right now because I understand that as far as Bank Pacific is concerned, where others put branches, Bank Pacific puts roots. Yeah. Okay. So if I were Lou and the nationalists and the Gwexit folks on this, I'd be embarrassed. Because the Admiral really called you out and said, you guys don't know what you're talking about. If this is the best you got, if this is the only reason that you want to stop work on the machine gun range, I'm going to take a minute here to talk to the guys on the bulldozers. Hang on just a second. Go! Go! You know, where were we on this? You know, because she really called them out. They advanced a false premise. And they stuck with it, and now they've been shown up as a bunch of charlatans not knowing what they're talking about, just grasping at any old reason, and as I predicted, not attacking the military buildup head-on, but presenting themselves as environmental wackos and cultural groupies. And they're doing all this to protect the culture and the environment. And if that's the case, if your cause is really just and you really believe in it, you don't have to have a handle on the facts. Any old thing that you can say to advance your agenda, that's fair game. So, but getting back to the Department of Agriculture, I could envision the Director of Agriculture, and I forgot her name, sorry. I can envision her writing a letter to Chatfield herself saying, "Dear Admiral Chatfield, could you help us with some of our plants here on the island? We would like to either one, if you could spare a little space, plant some of our stuff on military property because we know it will be well taken care of then. And if there's any danger of extinction, you will prevent that from happening." That would be our first choice. Second choice, as far as government of Guam land is concerned, if we enter into an agreement, would you come in and manage it for us? Because you seem to be so much better at it than we are, and you seem to be so much more willing to tell the truth about what you're doing than some of the other folks that I've seen here. That's why I call this Director of Agriculture versus Admiral Chatfield. I know a guy who works at the Department of Agriculture, but he's in animals, not plants. So I suppose ne'er the twain shall meet. He was on the Ray Gibson show this morning. That's Tom, what's his last name, Real Joe Cruz?
Oh, you mean Dr. Tom Poole?
Dr. Tom Poole, yeah.
Yeah.
He was on Ray's show this morning. Okay, so we've covered the Tory case, the Director of Administration versus Chatfield. And the next item I have here is Josh, Lieutenant Governor Joshua Tenorio, Josh versus My Money. And this is a story that ran on KOAM last night. Adelup travel tops $100,000. Yeah, it's a good thing, it's a good thing where our government's rolling in dough so we can afford these trips. According to documents KOM obtained by way of a Freedom of Information Act request, Adelup's senior staff has spent $106,486 on travel so far in 2019. Magahaga Lou Leon Guerrero is Adelup's most frequent flyer, taking 5 trips, costing taxpayers $25,853. The governor has been off island a total of 36 days so far in 2019. Leon Guerrero's longest trip was to attend board meetings and the National Governors Association meetings in San Francisco, New York, Washington, D.C. From February 17 to March 1, First Gentleman Jeff Cook traveled with Leon Guerrero on that trip at a cost of $6,007. The First Gentleman. Lieutenant Governor Tenorio has taken 4 trips totaling 31 days and $25,179. Tenorio's longest trip was 10 days for meeting with the Guam Society of America, Department of Defense, National Institute of Corrections, the National Lieutenant Governors Association meetings in Washington, and the Chatlu Festival in San Diego. I'm sure glad he got to go to the Chatlu Festival in San Diego. Tenorio has also traveled to New York twice, once to attend the International Gay and Lesbian Travel Association convention from April 23 to 28, and from June 23 to July 1 to attend World Pride events where he was a featured speaker. Now, that cost us $25,179. Some of that money was money I paid in taxes. Yeah. So how much of my money do you think I wanted to dedicate to sending our lieutenant governor? And by the way, if you didn't know this, Real Joe Cruz, our lieutenant governor is the first openly homosexual governor in the whole country. So I suppose it only makes sense that he wanted to go to these pride activities because
It's got to represent.
Yeah, well, and pride. I mean, aren't we? Every place should have something to be proud of.
Yeah.
You know, in Wisconsin, it was the Wisconsin Badgers and the Packers football team, and sometimes the Braves or the Brewers nowadays. Yeah. So we don't have professional baseball teams or professional football teams, but by God, we got the first homosexual lieutenant governor in the country.
Well, I'm not upset at all.
You're not upset?
No, that I had to pay for their trip.
Really?
No, yeah. I feel like I did something like, man, I sent them on trips.
You sent them, huh?
Yeah.
You kind of felt
like a big shot.
Powerful, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of like, Siggy, hey,
I
boy.
haven't been anywhere in a long time, but I send people on trips.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but when you get ready to go somewhere, let me know. So I ain't going to pay for it. I only want to pay for my own trips.
Roger that, sir.
Yeah. I only want to pay for my own trips and my family. Other than that, pay for your own trips yourself. If you're doing some really legitimate government business, that's fine. But in my experience here in dealing with the government of Guam in several different capacities, I have made the determination that most of our problems occur right here on island. And the solutions to those problems are to be found right here on island. You don't have to go to New York to solve our problems. Maybe Washington once in a while, depending on how you do it. But I don't see that Guam is a better place because we spent all this money to send our lieutenant governor to, what's it called here? World Pride events, where he was a featured speaker. Yeah, so we're spending a lot of money on travel. Deputy Chief of Staff John Jr. Calvo has taken 2 trips, 17 days, 13,923. Calvo accompanied Lieutenant Governor Tenorio to meetings in Washington and the Chetlu Festival in San Diego. I suppose he had to staff the lieutenant governor. You know, if you're important, you need to have someone staff you. So when you get to a hotel, that person checks you in and he goes out in front of the hotel and hails a cab for you and all of these really important things to do.
A handler.
A handler.
Yeah, that's nice.
Some places in politics, those people that do that are called, that one would be called a body man.
Oh,
a body man.
Body man.
Yeah, sort of a combination of a valet and a chauffeur and a gopher and
nice,
et cetera. Yeah, pretty prized positions. Well, there's just no good news in the news today. You know, as far as the Tory case, the good news is that I think the appropriate result was reached. A legal result was reached, a defensible result was reached, but nevertheless, a criminal conviction was reversed. I probably don't see that as good news. The horrible way that the National Guard handled the child abuser, etc., because he was innocent until proven guilty, bad news. Then we come up on this, spending $100 and some odd thousand to go to Chetlo fiestas and pride parades and on and on and on. We sooner or later, I don't know if I'll live long enough to see this, we got to get over the idea that we are some sort of satrapy on the coast of Asia like Brunei or something like that, where we have sultans and all of this wealth that we've got to display in our international travels, because we don't. You know, we're just a very small island with a very small population, and we're a couple $1 billion in debt. And all of our public officials seem to have, like Governor Calvo's wife had 3 cops go with her to London to pick up her daughter from school. And I've said this over and over again. I don't think anybody ever even pays any attention, but this is what I want to see. I want to see an effective, efficient government operating within the laws that provides basic government services on at least a break-even basis. That's it. Just do that. You don't have to go to the International Pride Parade and be the keynote speaker in order to feel like I got my money's worth out of my taxes. Stop doing that kind of stuff. Stop all of the fancy stuff. Stop all of the nice-to-haves. And just get down to the basic government services. And if you do, any of you people in political life, if you can do that and the people see you're doing that, you'll have a job forever. Okay, that's Josh versus my money. Next, I've got some Wexit here from Michael Bavacqua. So are you listening, Jesse? You're probably going to agree with some of the things that Michael Bavacqua says, even though I probably won't. Bavacqua, Guam's liberation didn't set us free. Now, I have another article here, I probably can't find it, where a guy named Cooper said that we don't have freedom. In one of these rallies, he says, we don't have freedom. And I guess there's a lot that depends on the words freedom and free. And what does that mean? I feel like I'm free. I can sit here in front of this microphone and I can say just about anything I want to say. I can't say the 7 impermissible words that you can't say on the radio, but I can state my opinion regardless of whether or not it angers people in the government. And I'm not worried about stepping out of the front door here and having Lenny Briscoe slap the cuffs on me and telling me that I have a right to remain silent, etc. And I know that if for some reason I should get arrested, no matter for what and by whom, in 2 days or less, I'll be in front of a magistrate and I'll be able to, and someone will have to show why I'm being held in custody. We saw that case decided just a little while ago. A guy was held in custody for 25 days, even though he was in the hospital for much of that. And the court said, no excuse. You didn't bring him, you didn't comply with that law. Indictment is dismissed. So because of the constitutional rights that I have here, the negative rights provided by the Bill of Rights, the United States Constitution, because I live in a community that's governed by the rule of law, I feel like I'm free. I don't feel like I'm in some kind of bondage. Yeah, now I can see Jesse sitting over there saying, should I call? Should I call Bob and tell Bob, but we can't vote for president? That's true, but does that mean that we're not free? Do people in the District of Columbia get to vote for a congressman and senators? No. Does that mean they're not free? And until the Constitution was amended long into the history of the District of Columbia, people in the District of Columbia couldn't vote even for president. Did that mean that all that time they weren't free? Did the people living in Hawaii before statehood, 1959, and the incorporated territory of Hawaii, did they feel like they weren't free? Well, they did for a little while in World War II when Hawaii was under martial law. We were under martial law here for a matter of hours after Typhoon Pamela. But guess what happened, Real Joe Cruz?
What?
A couple of lawyers went to court and got an injunction against the governor putting us under martial law.
Oh.
He didn't do it right. So the martial law didn't last very long. So if you're looking for freedom, I'm going to state an absolute here. The United States is the freest country in the world. And that's one of the reasons that so many people are so anxious to come here. You see, if you want to see the absence of freedom, okay, I got the home stretch coming up here.
Building a business is tough work. Big or small, Nanbo Insurance has your business covered. Nanbo takes the guesswork out of coverage to protect your investments. Over the years, Nanbo has worked with businesses of all sizes, from large hotels to small businesses. Nanbo Insurance will be your best asset. With Nanbo, you can also save big when you bundle up and insure your car, home, motorcycle, or business. Enjoy great savings, up to 50%. Visit nanbo.com or call 477-9754 for more details.
Business travel just got easier. Take your data plan with you for only $10 a day to all 17 Data to Go destinations. Never worry about additional data roaming charges when you go where your business needs you. The US, China, Thailand, and so much more. Have the assurance you need to check emails, surf the web, and stay connected. Call 688-2677 today to make sure your account is Data to Go ready. Docomo Pacific. Better together.
Straight from Louisville, Kentucky, the call to the post at Churchill Downs. We're heading down the home stretch of Tall Tales. It means I got about 8 minutes to wrap this up. I could go into more Bavakwa. Guam's liberation didn't set us free. But maybe I'll just cruise through the Facebook comments here and see what you guys are all saying. I've been doing most of the talking here. Troy Torres was the first one to sign on. Welcome aboard, Troy. Good to have you. And Juanita Machi. Haven't seen you for a long time, Juanita. I'm glad you're back. And Ishmael Velez is here. Elmore Mo Cotton. He says, hi, Bob. Nice hair. Yeah, I've had it for a long time.
Very nice hair you have there, Bob.
Trying to hang on to it as long as I can, yeah. You probably had hair once upon a time, too.
I did. I'm envious, sir, of your hair. Very nice hair you have.
Well, thank you very much, Real Joe Cruz. That's probably the nicest thing you've ever said about me.
No problem, sir.
That's probably because I'm right here in the room. Okay, Rico Blancaflor, good afternoon, Judge Bob and Tall Tales Posse. Brad Hewitt, hello, Bob. I'm staying awake to catch your show today. Hope you comment on the Supreme Court decision to vacate the Torah conviction. More importantly, explain how he was not arrested when officers were speaking to him, yet the court found he was not properly Mirandized. Well, the voluntariness doesn't depend on arrest. It depends on a restriction of liberty. So a person who's being interviewed, even though he hasn't been arrested, if a reasonable person, considering all the circumstances, would figure that person didn't feel like he could terminate the interview and leave. It's a custodial investigation or custodial interview, even though there's no arrest, Brad. Now, usually on TV, the Mirandization happens right after the arrest, but that's not necessarily the way it works. Pierre is here. Afternoon, Judge. Nate horns in to say he's just checking in. And we got hey, did you open up the Tom line today?
They've been open, sir, since we started the show.
I haven't heard it. I haven't heard a Tom all day.
Maybe Tom's taking a nap.
Tom taking a nap?
Possibly.
Well, let's be quiet then so we don't wake him up.
You got it, sir.
Yeah. Tom Van Engen's here. He's saying good afternoon to you and me. And Brad Hewitt, lack of gumption. I don't know. I hope he's not talking about me. And then he says roasted. And then Brett goes on to say, how about a self-determination vote every 10 years to make everyone in the past and future satisfied? Yeah, I never got a chance to vote on self-determination. Look at how long I've been around. Never did get a chance to vote on self-determination. It's a human right. Jesse told me. Joe Cruz, this is not you, this is another Joe Cruz, who says he needs a nap. You may proceed, Joe Cruz. Brad Hewitt, that Congress taking away the Organic Act is nonsensical as a talking point. The likelihood of that happening is just a bit higher than a snowball surviving in hell. Probably, yeah, you're probably right. Jose Martinez, what about Santa Claus? Is he real? I think it depends on taking all the facts into consideration from the standpoint of a reasonable man. And of course, if you saw the movie called Miracle on 34th Street, which is a really good political movie, you know that Santa Claus is real because the United States Post Office says he's real. And then Jose Martinez says, what about my presents? And then Jose says, but what about the cookies? Should I leave them out? And then Jose says, but what about, I guess he's commenting on Jesse. Ishmael Velez, if those protesting the U.S. on island get their way, in a couple years, Guam will become Guamzuela. Guam's. Where what's Gov Guam is Gov Guam's, and what's yours is Gov Guam's. Rico Blancaflor. Oh, man. Want to hear the judge's take on today's big news. He's probably getting tired of Jesse's rant, huh? Jesse Limtiaco. Guam has no inherent right to Guam to govern itself. What about the exception of certain fundamental rights? Federal constitutional rights do not automatically apply to unincorporated territories. What are certain fundamental rights, Judge Bob? Jesse, go to your internet, type in the word fundamental rights, and let me know what it says. Carl Bora, good afternoon and half a day, Bob. Real Joe Cruz and International Tall Tales Posse. Good start to another excellent show. Looking forward to Bob's lawyerly take on the Tory case. And then Brad comes back and says, great job explaining the Tory situation. Romeo, Guam. Oh my gosh. Did not check the news, but Guam inbox blew up. Then in the car, I heard you say you were going to discuss the Tory ruling. I just read it online. I have lost all faith in the island's judicial system. The corruption is so deep and the rot so pervasive, we have lost any chance for real justice for the people of Guam, unless you are well-connected and wealthy. Well, kind of a jaundiced view, though, there, Romeo, but we'll see what we can do about that tomorrow, if you're still online tomorrow. Okay, so another educational, exciting, informational episode of the greatest afternoon talk show on FM radio here in the Western Pacific. So it's over for today, but the real Joe Cruz and I will be back tomorrow afternoon at 1600, 4 o'clock. See you then.